Hello, everyone. It is your favorite realtor, Shari Roberts, with your favorite insurance agent, Jose Maurisset with People's Insurance. How are you today, Jose?
How are you?
We are great. So Jose was gracious enough to donate his time for us on Tuesday for over an hour, discussing everything that's happening to, especially this is regarding the Florida insurance market. Starting May 1st. So we learned many interesting things. So we thought we'd come right back at you and just kind of sum it up in a brief interview. So Jose, what do agents and homeowners need to know, and prospective buyers? What is the most important change that's happening May 1st of 2023?
Right. With the citizens, now the roof age is going to be, they're going to have a change. Now we are going to need at least 5 years of expectancy life for any kind of roof. So that means that at least the roof has to have another year for them to be taken. So it has to be 5, but then the roof has to have 6 in order to be able to qualify for them now with the new 5 years rule.
Okay, so are you saying now that a Florida roof, if an inspector puts on the 4-point of the wind mitt, if they put 5 years, it's now the same as 0, correct?
Yes, exactly. It has to be 6 in order to be taken, and then have a year to see what they're going to do on the next one.
And we don't know what they're going to do if we get a 6 or 7 year. Like, okay, so they can come after us if we're the buyer, say, and make us change the roof in a year or 2.
Right.
Okay, next question. As realtors and prospective buyers and sellers, let's just assume that the seller doesn't have enough money to put a new roof on, okay, prior to close, and that the buyer really wants to purchase the house. How do we bind insurance at closing now?
Well, it depends on how they're gonna go. It depends on the buyer, what they are, want to do it, because you can either get money on a closing from the seller, but if the seller doesn't want to give it, then they have to come up with a deposit on the contractor to replace the roof. And if the roof the expectancy life is gone, but we have a contract with a licensed roofer that says that he's going to be replacing this roof after closing, that would give us the opportunity for the company to take it, in this case, Citizens, and they give you 90 days to replace it.
Okay, so what I want everybody to understand as well, prices are getting more negotiable. We're seeing when you write your contracts where we're asking the seller to contribute a certain percentage back to the buyer's closing costs from the seller. You have to check with the lender if it's financing. Remember, they have limits. Some banks only allow 3%, some allow 6%. And let's just say you do the maximum amount. Let's say it's 3%. Like the bank is letting the buyer get 3% of the purchase price back from the seller at closing, and that goes towards the buyer's closing costs and prepaids and prorations and all that. Well, you go to the inspection and you find out that the roof has no life left, and the seller says, okay, the roof is 30,000. I'll give you 15 more thousand on top of your 3%, at close, because one had nothing to do with the other, remember. Well, you have to check with the lender, because the lender might say, no, you're not allowed to do that. And you're also not allowed, which I found out, is you cannot put that $15,000 on the closing statement as a payment directly to, let's say, a roofer from the seller, because in some instances, the lender actually sees that again as seller contribution. And I discovered that they didn't allow that either. Yeah, so that was very difficult. And it's a shame, because the seller wants to sell, the buyer wants to buy, and the seller wants to give the buyer money, and the lender said no. So the only other solution to that, it could be reducing the price of the house, halfway of that, of the $30,000 roof, maybe you want to reduce it $15,000. You're still getting that money, that credit back, but the buyer has to decide whether or not this is the house for them, because they're going to have to replace that roof. If we do, Jose, let's just say, you know, again, we're not roofing contractors. The buyer gives a $500 deposit. You take that contract from the buyer, submit it to citizens, they vote, have a committee and say, okay, you have 30, 60, 90 days to replace the roof. What happens if they do not replace the roof after they close within those 30 days?
Usually they're given 90, and if they don't replace the roof, the policy will be set for cancellation for non-compliance of the, you know, of the agreement. So after those 90 days, they will receive a letter of canceling the policy.
Got it. Now, there's another thing I discovered, and I think you and I discussed this as well. My inspector was telling me, you used to say, you know, I don't know, yesterday, it's still not May 1st yet. You said that if we, you know, as a responsible listing agent and even as a responsible buyer's agent, I always go into, let's just use Palm Beach County again. I go into planning and zoning. It says open permit for the roof was 2016 and the permit was closed in 2017. And you're telling me, and so is my inspector, that you want the actual permit from the county. Is that correct?
Is that correct? That's also a requirement starting at, actually it was requested before, but now it's more, you know, they need it now. There's a requirement starting now. So
what happens if, I mean, you know, we're going to have instances where the house was built in the 90s or the 2000s and we just, you know, there was no permit. We can't find the permit. It's closed down. But let's say it's a newer roof. Let's say the inspector's like, yes, this roof was put on in the last 10 years, but we can't find the permit. What happens then?
In those cases, any roof older than 20 years or a house older than 20 years and they don't have a permit, they have to be submitted for company approval, in this case, citizens. Or most other companies also would probably require a 4-point up front, or they would do another one after policy if they will take it. But most likely, with citizen, it has to be submitted unbound and wait for the approval so you can continue.
Any optimistic thoughts about anything that's coming?
To be honest, I think I have more, you know, approved than denied in the cases that I submitted.
Okay, this, you know, I'm glad I have you here. I'm going to be selfish. I just had a question the other day. They did the inspection and they found out that, you know, we knew the roof was old, so we knew that, but the inspector reported an active leak. Does that change anything, or can we still do the?
Yes. To be honest, I had a couple of cases that were approved, but technically the guidelines that they changed says that roof has to be old, but not have a, you know, active leak at this point. It could be a leak in the past, and if it was fixed, you know, fine. But you know, the active leak, even though I got it approved once, it's against what they say they require.
So would it be wrong to spend a couple $100, repair the leak, do another? Is it the 4-point or the wind mitt that the roof is on?
Both. The roof is both, but then the one that details the actual length of the roof and the actual, you know, how it is on the 4-point.
Okay, so then can we do another 4-point and submit that one where there's no active leak, and then they approve it and then replace it?
Exactly. If it was replaced and they had the 4-point contains the information saying everything is fine, there is no damage, yes, can be submitted and waiting for approval.
Okay. So I know, you know, you do all over the state of Florida, and the further north you go, you know, the better, I guess, insurance companies.
The better, it's easier sometimes, yeah.
Okay. And what about the West Coast?
West Coast is getting, you know, good. The West Coast now is getting a little bit more complicated after last year hurricane. Mm-hmm. There's a few areas that are getting a little bit tougher now compared with the South Florida situation, like, you know, Seminole, Osceola, which, Hillsborough, and Orange, which is not on the west but the middle. They're getting a little bit tougher, but there's also more options there. South Florida is the one that has less options for companies, you know, but you know, up north it gets a little bit better, to be honest.
it is, do you find, is anybody else besides Citizens writing down here or no?
Oh yeah, we got over like 7, 8 companies that are writing. Myself, maybe there's a couple more that I don't really have, but the companies that I have, it depending on the quality of the house, the year of the house. Also, they see capacity. It means that if they have capacity on that particular zip code or area, you know, there are. It's just depending on the risk.
Okay, let's switch gears real quick to flood insurance. I understand that everyone has to have flood insurance no matter what by 2024, or what was the alternative to that you had discussed?
That was citizen requirements. That's a new requirement that also is going to sign up. Any policies that you have with them, if you're in the flood zone, you need to require to have a flood policy. That is happening even in the condos, which is getting a lot of crazy, because there are people on the 25th floor of the building that now requires to have flood insurance there in the flood zone. So what's going to happen, and I'm trying to participate in a couple of meetings with citizens. Actually, I have one for next week, to see if they are trying to amend these changes, because really it doesn't make sense to be on the 25th floor to have flood insurance. Even though that maybe people think about flood insurance at the pipe breaks or something, that's not. Flood insurance is technically water raising from the ground. It has to raise water 24 floors to get to the 25th. So that would be a tsunami. And
nobody will be around, God forbid, anyway at that point.
If that happens, don't worry if we have or not, because we won't be there.
No, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Okay, so there was that, and then I guess that was it. So what I'm recommending that agents pay attention to, and this is very important, find out again. So Jose will answer the call every time, even if he gets 10,000 calls. No, but use Jose. Feel free to use whatever homeowners insurance person is your favorite, and please ask, because this is what we do. Whenever I either take a listing or whenever I have a buyer, I send Jose the tax record, and we don't have the 4 of the wind mitt yet, but Jose's always like, okay, we do a little preliminary research. He says, I could see that the roof is newer or old, or it's in a flood zone, or, and you always give us a great estimate of what it's going to be. Then what I need you guys to do, especially if you represent a buyer, is go to the lender and say, okay, Sally Smith is approved for this loan. At what point does their homeowners insurance and flood insurance get so high that it throws off the ratios and they don't qualify for the loan anymore? So I keep using this example, but this actually happened north of West Palm. The aerial view of this, and again, it was a $1.5 million home, you could see the ocean. So Jose, you gave me a quote. You had 4 quotes. The first one was 15,000 and the other 3 were 26,000. So here's the thing. The person buying that $1.5 million home might be able to afford 26,000, but guess what? Maybe they don't want to. So here's the problem. They will not get denied from the loan. They won't be able to back out, and they'll be forced to purchase the home. So there is an addendum now that we're all including, where I call the lender and I say, okay, what's the absolute max that their homeowners insurance can be based on all the other things that are going on? Let's just use an example. What if they said 10,000? And then Jose says, well, it could be, I don't know. We got to see the 4 limit, but it's up there. Then you have to ask the buyer, what are they comfortable paying? And they may only be comfortable paying $5,000 a year. So that addendum has a max amount for the flood insurance and the homeowners insurance, so that even after your inspection period ends and your financing contingency ends, that the buyer is able to back out of the contract still and get their deposit back. So we want to, protect everyone and make sure that people aren't forced to buy something that they really can't afford, aren't comfortable paying, just because all their contingencies expired. So yeah, so that's about what we covered. Was there anything else that you see that's coming up? I mean, what could get more?
Not really. For now, I hope there's nothing more coming up as it's going to be bad, or if it's going to be for restrictions. I hope they don't come out. So let's just wait.
Yeah. So again, you guys, the best thing to do is to do your research. The best thing to do is to put your insurance and your mortgage broker on a conference call with the buyer. You can listen. I love to listen because then I learn. But it's not, these are not our decisions to make. Now, oh, I remember what my last question was. So we're in the inspection period. We get the 4-point in the wind mitt, and now we find out it has to go to committee. What do? Do we extend the inspection period? Like, how long is it taking? I know you've probably only done a few, but it's not even May 1st yet, but how long is it taking?
But now I would say a week, no more than a week.
Okay, so that would be an extra, you know, if we do a 7-day inspection.
Oh, I'll put it this way. Yeah, I'll put it as 7 business days, not calendar days. So that give you like 9 days. Okay, because they don't count Saturday and Sunday. Yeah.
Perfect. So again, guys, it's up to us to educate listing agents if they, you know, freak out that we're putting a 14-day inspection period. I don't know if you want to go that route, but you could do a 7-day and say only the insurance part is extended until we hear from citizens, you know, just to protect the buyer. Because again, it still may go through and say, yeah, if you replace the roof within 30 days, we'll bind it. So they're not going to get an insurance denial, but maybe the buyer doesn't want or doesn't have 20, 30, 40,000. So that's another question. Somebody whose roof is getting ready to have to be replaced, what do you recommend? And I know, you know, they say shingles 20 years, but it's really not. And metal is 40 to 50 and it's really not. And tiles not 35 years. What do you suggest for everybody who's putting a roof on?
To be honest, I have no consistency to believe that the metal roof is going to last, you know, 30 or 40 years. On my point of view, the metal roof is going to be there forever, especially those they made it, you know, with materials that doesn't have a corruption and they last longer, even though technically this has 50 years. I'm assuming they put an age just to have an age, because I don't believe that it's only going to be 50. Those are, I would say, at some point less expensive than some type of tile roof, which is they're more, I would say, you know, those are the most probably expensive one, but the one that's going to last the most. Shingles usually are the cheapest, and they last a lot less than, you know, the other ones.
Okay, so if somebody didn't have 50,000, 80,000 to put a tile roof, can we do? Because you're saying, I think you had said to me once, you know, if you put a shingle roof on in 12 years, they're going to tell you, guess what, you need to do it again.
Exactly. If you put a shingles now in 12 to 15 years, you're going to be in the same situation again. If the insurance market continues to be the way it is right now.
So what we always say is it has to get worse to get better. And Jose, you and I are optimists. We're not doom and gloomers. We just learn as much as we can and then find ways around it. There's no way that they're going to let this go where nobody can buy or sell a home, and especially with what's going on with condos and the retrofitting and the 40-year construction for the concrete and all that stuff. So it's got to get better.
Yes, it has to at one point.
So, all right. I think that was it. A quick wrap up. Thank you again for this poor guy for donating time to all of us. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to talk to me, Shari Roberts, and especially Jose with People's Insurance. And attached to this video, I'll have all of Jose's information for you. So thank you so much. And Jose, thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.